As somebody who's out of the FBI now and has been for at least a few years, I'm curious to get your take, A, on what do you think of Kash Patel, and B, for the last better part of 10 years, the reputation of the FBI has taken a pretty significant hit with, Comey and January 6th, conspiracy and, assassination attempts and, Russiagate and the fucking Hunter laptop and the the mixing and weaving of politics or personal politics into high-level FBI guys kind of staining the reputation. I'm curious, what do you think of all that, and what are your thoughts on the FBI currently?
Yeah, it's a good question. And my answer is I need to go around before I get to the answer. And let me tell you this. Being an FBI agent is difficult. And let me tell you what I mean by that. To be a good FBI agent. You remember earlier when we were talking about what did my day look like? I'm running surveillance at night. I'm meeting with informants in dark alleyways. I'm making friends with shady characters. I'm deploying all over the U.S., all over the world, doing these different things. It's a burden. Right? And to be good at it, you have to do that on steroids. You got to have multiple informants, multiple cases, if you really want to do your job well. And that was my life. There are agents in the Bureau who say, one, I'm not good at that. I'm not good with people. I don't develop informants well. I don't have a good work ethic. Whatever it might be, I'm not good at it. I can raise my hand. And after 5 years in the FBI, it might be 7 now, but I think it's 5, you can get promoted into leadership, okay? You can't look at this, Mike, through the same lens that we do in the military. You can't look at it that it's an up or out. You got to get promoted. And you're still a warfighter even though you're now achieving rank. It's not like that in the FBI. And we try, I know I always try to make that parallel, but you can't. The minute you get into management, it's not leadership, the minute you get into management, you're saying again, I will never work another case in my career. So before I retired, the last thing I did is I went back to the academy, and for 6 months I pushed a class through. It's like being a counselor to a BUDS class, so to say. Yeah. When they graduate, then they graduated and become agents. I retired 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
That was the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to push one class through.
Like a class proctor kind of thing?
Yeah, it's called a counselor, class counselor. And I lived with them, I PT'd with them, I did everything with them. I sat in class with them. I was their mentor for 6 months. And as we got ready to graduate, I told them this. I said, right now, all you want to do, you can't wait to put that gun on your hip, that badge on your belt, and those handcuffs in your carrying case and get out there and arrest bad guys. Some of you, in 5 years from now, are going to raise your hand and get into leadership, and you're saying, I'm never going to do that again for the next 15 years of my 20-year career. What happened where for the first 5 years, or right here at the academy, that's all you want to do is arrest bad guys, and 5 years from now, you want to get into management and sit at meetings and discuss budgets and do manpower issues and never, ever work a case. Now, granted, your agents are going to work cases, and you're going to give them your advice that you've gained after 5 years in the FBI on how to run their case. You have 5-year supervisors managing 20-year veterans on how to run their case. You see the problem with that, right? What happens in 5 years that you say, I don't want to do this anymore? And the problem is, this is hard work. And so where I'm going with this story, Mike, is this. The guys that have embarrassed the FBI, in my opinion, in the senior leadership, not the director, because he was never an agent. We're talking, most of these things that you've talked about, that you just mentioned, it's these senior executives that have stepped on themselves and embarrassed the FBI. They got into management at the 5-year mark. They haven't worked a case in 10 to 15 years by the time they get to DC and achieve these senior executive positions. And quite frankly, unless they were lucky like me where they fell right into the middle of a strip club case that was super high profile. In those first 5 years, they probably didn't do a lot there either because, quite frankly, what do you know in the first 5 years? The Bureau is a slow roll process. You're at your best at the 15-year mark, right? That's when you now know how the entire system works. So when these guys left the active ranks of the FBI and became into management, they probably weren't very good at their job. They probably realized that and said, I want to go into management. And the financial gain for the management is there. It's going to reflect on your retirement. So there is a financial motivation, and I get it. No problem at all. But the best agents I ever knew that I worked with, and I'm not going to put myself in that category, but I can list names. They never spent one day in management. They spent their entire 20 years working cases, and they said, the money be damned. I don't care. As I get promoted, I'm going to make more money. It's going to help my pension. It could potentially might be worth more $500,000 over the life of your pension. Yeah. But so I'm not doing it. I'm going to work cases. Those are the guys that have embarrassed the FBI. My answer to your question is the Bureau needs to change how we select senior executives. We don't need to let guys at the 5-year mark. What did you know after 5 years in the SEALs? Probably not very much in the big scheme of things, right? As far as the way the teams worked in the big Navy and et cetera.
I still don't know jack shit.
Okay, you get my point. Trust me, at 5 years, an agent doesn't know much either.
Yeah.
So the Bureau has to change the way we pick our leaders in the future.
How would that happen? I mean, could Kash Patel at this point make that change and fix it? Or
yes.
Yeah.
Well, the way it would happen is you need to eliminate the need for managers. You need to reduce the size of the empire from a heavy at the top perspective. Yeah. And he's done that. He said, I don't want all of these executives at headquarters. He has issued a mandate that over the next 18 months, he wants to cut staffing at headquarters by half. Yeah. Send them back out to the field. Okay, that's part of the solution. I would agree with that. We need less managers. That's the simple answer. But also, we need less supervisors at the squad level. We need less of a hierarchy within the Atlanta office, not just in Washington, D.C., where they manage the entire FBI. There's those baby empires in every office. Yeah. In Atlanta, in Chicago, in Dallas. You need to reduce the size of that structure as well so that you keep people in the field working cases. And you only choose people into management that can tell you, here's my who's who of bad guys that I've sent to prison. This is why I'm a duty expert and why I should be, if I want to be, a manager in this particular field. So often we promote people. I spent my entire year working what we call violent crime major offenders. I could raise my hand, Mike, true story, and I could be promoted as a manager into terrorism simply because I went to Afghanistan for 3 months. And now I'm managing terrorism investigations, which frankly I know nothing about. But the Bureau would allow me to do it because I convinced them that my 3 months in Afghanistan was worthy. They need to fill that billet. I'm a guy, so they let me fill it, and then I go and screw it up. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing in the FBI.
Yeah. So to reduce it to a simple thumbs up, thumbs down, Kash Patel.
So far, up.
Thumbs up.
Absolutely.
Do you think that whether it's current FBI or recently former FBI agents, that you could reduce what type of guy they are, whether or not they raise their hand at 5 years or not, by whether or not they would give him a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I don't understand. Ask me again.
So is it safe to say that, a guy like you who never said, hey, I want to be in management,
right,
is going to give him the thumbs up, whether you're currently in the FBI or
yes,
freshly out of it?
Yes.
The guys who give him the thumbs down are the guys that are going to put their hand up at 5 years and say,
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he came out recently and said, and you might have missed it because it's just a Bureau thing, but he came out, and it made headlines. It made Fox headlines and others, but it still wasn't a big ticket item. He came out and said, in the next 18 months, we're cutting headquarters in half.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
The minute he said that, all those guys you just referenced are thumbs up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we all know that's where the problem's been.
So if a guy says, I fucking hate Kash Patel, and he's an FBI guy, it's pretty safe to assume
more times than not, he's probably looking out for himself to stay in management.
Yeah.
Yeah.